In 1951, Congress passed the Durham-Humphrey Amendment, the law that made a doctor's prescription required to access medicines Americans had dispensed themselves for generations. Your grandmother read that law and kept her garden anyway. Number 7 contains compounds that outperform common antibiotics against certain bacterial strains. Number 14 was listed as an official drug in the United States Pharmacopoeia for 116 years. Then removed, the same decade synthetic sedatives were patented. And number 3 targets the same biological pathway as a prescription drug. Recalled in 2004, after causing tens of thousands of heart attacks. These 25 plants were not abandoned because they stopped healing. They were abandoned because somebody got paid when you forgot them. Hit subscribe. Once you see what your grandmother knew, that the pharmacy industry needed you to forget, you will never look at a medicine cabinet the same way again. Let us count down. Number 25, comfrey. Your grandmother called it knit bone. She packed it onto sprains, bruises, and wounds that would not close. Ezekiel 47, verse 12. Their leaves shall be for healing. Comfrey's healing compound is allantoin, which triggers cell proliferation, your body's own repair signal, amplified. In 2001, the FDA restricted comfrey products for internal use, citing pyrrolizidine alkaloids that at high doses can damage the liver. Topical use remained legal. That same year, synthetic allantoin, extracted, isolated, repackaged, was being patented into wound creams sold at $14 a tube. Your grandmother pressed the leaf directly onto the wound. The pharmacy now charges you for the compound it contains. Number 24, elderberry. Your great-grandmother made elderberry syrup every October, and her household did not visit doctors in November. Proverbs 17:22 says a joyful heart is good medicine. Elderberries contain anthocyanins and flavonoids that bind directly to influenza virus surface proteins, blocking cellular entry. A 2016 randomized study confirmed elderberry extract reduced flu duration by 4 days compared to placebo. The pharmaceutical flu treatment market is now worth $4.5 billion annually. Beginning in 1972, the FDA over-the-counter drug review process forced herbal remedy manufacturers to either fund clinical trials or strip health claims from their labels, a cost no elderberry farmer could afford. Your great-grandmother's syrup cost her one season's harvest. Number 23, plantain, not the banana. The low weed your grandfather mowed over. Psalm 104:14 says he makes plants grow for people to cultivate. Your grandmother picked plantain leaves from the yard and pressed them onto bee stings, rashes, and infected splinters. Plantain contains aucubin, a compound with documented anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and wound-healing properties. Modern pharmaceutical companies patented isolated variants of that same mechanism. The plant your grandmother harvested from the lawn for free now funds a billion-dollar wound care industry when you buy the synthetic equivalent. Number 22, yarrow. Soldiers in World War I carried yarrow in their field kits. The botanical name Achillea millefolium comes from Achilles, who packed it into his soldiers' wounds. The practice predates the Bible and is documented across ancient Mediterranean healing traditions for one reason: it worked. Yarrow contains acyleic acid, which accelerates blood coagulation, and isovaleric acid, which reduces inflammation. Military field medicine used yarrow compresses through both world wars. After 1945, pharmaceutical companies moved aggressively into wound care. By 1960, yarrow had disappeared from standard first aid guidance. It still grows in every roadside ditch. Number 21, garlic. Numbers 11:5. The Israelites in the wilderness mourned the garlic they left behind in Egypt, They did not mourn it for flavor. They mourned it because they were getting sick without it. Garlic's compound, allicin, is one of the most studied antimicrobials in nutritional science. It is effective against MRSA, the antibiotic-resistant staph infection that kills tens of thousands of Americans annually. The pharmaceutical antibiotic market reached $50 billion in 2023. Your grandmother crushed raw garlic into honey for chest infections. The allicin was free. The prescription was not. Psalm 51 verse 7 says, "Purify me with hyssop, and I will be clean." Hyssop's volatile oils, pinocamphone and isopinocamphone, have documented antibacterial and antiviral properties. Ancient Israelites used hyssop in purification rituals for leprosy, mold contamination, and post-illness cleansing. Your grandmother made hyssop tea for lung congestion, and European herbalists used it as the frontline lung treatment for centuries. Beginning in the 1940s, as pharmaceutical cough syrups entered mass production, hyssop was reclassified from medicine to ornamental herb in American regulatory guidance. Ornamental herbs do not compete with licensed pharmaceutical products. Lavender has been documented in Hebrew healing traditions dating to the Second Temple period, and it was central to monastery medicine throughout early Christian history, used for headaches, restlessness, and sleeplessness by monastics who built their medical practice around the plants God placed in the created world. Your grandmother kept dried lavender under pillows and rubbed lavender oil onto temples for headaches. Lavender's compound linalool binds directly to GABA receptors in the brain, the same receptors targeted by benzodiazepine sedatives. A clinical trial in phytomedicine in 2014 confirmed an oral lavender preparation reduced anxiety as effectively as lorazepam. The global sleep aid pharmaceutical market is now worth $80 billion annually. Your grandmother's pillow sachet cost her one summer's cuttings. Number 18, chamomile. Matthew 23, verse 23, records that the Pharisees paid tithes on mint, dill, and cumin, evidence that medicinal herb cultivation was an economic institution in first century Israel, not a fringe practice. Your grandmother made chamomile tea for every stomach upset, every anxious child, every sleepless night. Chamomile's compound apigenin binds to benzodiazepine receptors, the same mechanism as anti-anxiety pharmaceuticals. A 2009 University of Pennsylvania clinical trial confirmed chamomile extract significantly reduced generalized anxiety disorder symptoms. The anti-anxiety pharmaceutical market exceeds $15 billion annually. Your grandmother's tea cost her nothing. She grew it by the back fence every year. Number 17, calendula, grandmother's wound and skin remedy. Leviticus 13 and 14 contain detailed protocols for skin condition treatment using plant-based preparations because the people who wrote Leviticus understood that skin infections were life-threatening without intervention. Your grandmother kept calendula salve for every cut, burn, and rash. Calendula's flavonoids and terpenoids accelerate wound closure and have demonstrated antifungal properties in multiple clinical studies. The pharmaceutical topical wound care market exceeds $6 billion annually. Beginning in the 1960s, the Food and Drug Administration began requiring clinical trial evidence for any health claim, a standard small-scale herb growers could not afford to meet. The industry that set that standard could. Number 16, thyme. Exodus 30 prescribes specific aromatic herbs for the tabernacle, not for fragrance, but because the priests understood that aromatic plants purified the air and supported the sick. Your grandmother made thyme compresses for chest congestion and thyme tea for sore throats. Thymol, the compound in thyme, is so effective as an antiseptic that it remains the active ingredient in Listerine mouthwash, a formula unchanged since 1879. The pharmaceutical company that owns Listerine patents the delivery mechanism and the concentration. The compound itself came from a plant your grandmother grew by her kitchen door. Number 15, mullein. Isaiah 35, verses 1-2. The desert will blossom. Mullein was one of the most common desert edge healing plants across the ancient Near East, used for respiratory conditions across Semitic, Greek, Roman, and Appalachian traditions for over 2,000 years. Your grandmother made mullein leaf tea for coughs that would not break. Mullein saponins, thin bronchial mucus, enabling the cough reflex to clear the airway. The pharmaceutical bronchodilator market is now worth $25 billion annually. Your grandmother's mullein grew wild on the fence row. She never paid a pharmacy for what the hillside gave her free. Number 14, valerian. Valerian, traditional sleep and nerve remedy. Revelation 22, verse 2. The leaves of the tree of life for the healing of the nations. Valerian was listed as an official drug in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1936, 116 years, as a recognized medicine for sleep and nervous disorders. It treated shell-shocked soldiers in World War I and calmed civilians during air raids in World War II. In the 1940s, pharmaceutical companies began patenting barbiturate sedatives, and valerian was quietly dropped from official drug references. Your grandmother grew valerian root, dried it, and slept. Today, a bottle of valerian capsules sits next to a $200 prescription sleep medication at the same pharmacy counter. Number 13 in St. John's wort. The early Christian church gathered St. John's wort on the feast day of John the Baptist, the longest day of the year, when its hypericin content peaks. Your grandmother kept it for nerve pain and low spirits after illness. Hypericin and hyperforin have been confirmed in over 30 randomized controlled trials to reduce mild to moderate depression symptoms. By the late 1990s, St. John's wort was selling over $400 million annually, while SSRIs were becoming the most profitable drug category in pharmaceutical history. In 2000, the FDA issued a public advisory warning of drug interactions. Sales declined 80% over the following decade. Your grandmother's wort cost her one afternoon in the garden. Genesis 3:18. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth. The thistle God named as a feature of the fallen earth was used by the people of ancient Israel as both food and medicine. Milk thistle contains silymarin, the most clinically studied natural liver compound in medical literature. Hundreds of trials confirm it reduces liver enzyme damage from alcohol, medication, and toxin exposure. Pharmaceutical liver support drugs cost hundreds of dollars per month. Milk thistle grows in abandoned lots. Your grandmother made tea from the seeds. The seeds cost nothing. Number 11, fennel. Matthew 23:23. You tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have neglected justice. Fennel belonged to that same category of healing herbs, so common they were taxed. Your grandmother chewed fennel seed after meals, and she gave fennel water to colicky infants. Fennel's compound anethole relaxes smooth muscle in the digestive tract, the same mechanism targeted by pharmaceutical antispasmodic medications. The digestive pharmaceutical market exceeds $45 billion annually. Fennel seed costs $2 at any grocery store. Your grandmother knew this. The pharmacy did not advertise it. Lamentations 3:19. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. Artemisia absinthium, known as wormwood, was used by ancient Israelite healers for intestinal parasites and stubborn fevers. Your grandmother kept it for digestive complaints that nothing else would touch. In 1912, the United States banned absinthe, reclassifying wormwood from medicine to a dangerous intoxicant. It remained banned for 95 years. Meanwhile, its close botanical relative, Artemisia annua, called sweet wormwood, contained a compound called Artemisinin that became the world's most effective malaria treatment. Traditional healers had used it for 2,000 years before the 2015 Nobel Prize confirmed it. The plant was ancient. The pharmaceutical version is now patented and sold globally. Number 9, aloe vera. Numbers 24 verse 6, like aloes planted by the Lord. Aloe vera appears across the ancient Near East as a healing plant. So ubiquitous, it was compared to a landscape feature. Your grandmother kept an aloe plant on the kitchen windowsill for burns and skin irritation. She would split the leaf and press the gel directly onto the wound. Aloe vera's compound artemisinin stimulates macrophage activity, your immune system's first responders. The global aloe vera market now exceeds $13 billion annually. Your grandmother's plant cost her a single cutting, passed hand to hand for free across generations. Number 8, rosemary. Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 13, describes the beloved's garden as a place of fragrant, healing spices, because in the ancient world, the aromatic garden and the medicine cabinet were the same thing. Rosemary's compounds, rosmarinic acid and carnosic acid, are among the most studied natural neuroprotective compounds in current Alzheimer's and cognitive decline research. Your grandmother braided rosemary into food and household preparations because she understood it sharpened the mind. The pharmaceutical cognitive health market now exceeds $12 billion annually. Your grandmother's rosemary grew by the back step. She never had a name for what it did. It worked anyway. Number 7, sage. Ezekiel 47 verse 12 says their leaves will be for healing. Proverbs 17 verse 22 says a joyful heart is good medicine. Sage, whose Latin name salvia, is rooted in the word for healing, was the frontline medicine of the ancient and medieval world. Your grandmother made sage tea for sore throats and sage gargles for gum infections. Sage's compounds, ursolic acid and carnosol, have demonstrated antimicrobial properties against multiple bacterial strains in published clinical literature. Beginning in the 1960s, pharmaceutical mouthwashes and antibiotics replaced sage gargles in American medicine. The sage still grows. The knowledge to use it was the thing that was erased. Number 6, turmeric. Song of Solomon. Chapter 4, verse 14 lists calamus and cinnamon, the ancient spice routes that connected Israel to the healing plants of the East. Turmeric traveled those routes and was used by the physicians of the ancient world for inflammation, wound healing, and liver support. Turmeric's compound curcumin inhibits NF-kappa B, the primary cellular inflammation signaling pathway targeted by pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory drugs. Over 3,000 peer-reviewed studies confirm curcumin's biological activity. The anti-inflammatory pharmaceutical market exceeds $100 billion annually. Your grandmother's turmeric cost her $1 at the market. Exodus 12:8. Eat the lamb with bitter herbs. Biblical scholars and Jewish tradition include dandelion family greens among the wild bitter plants. Israelite families gathered for the Passover table. plants known by taste and season, not by label. Your grandmother ate young dandelion greens in spring salads and made dandelion root tea for her liver and kidneys. Dandelion contains taraxacin and inulin, compounds that demonstrated diuretic activity in a 2011 clinical pilot study. Without the potassium depletion that makes long-term pharmaceutical diuretic use dangerous. The dandelion your grandmother harvested grew in her lawn without being planted. Matthew 23, verse 23, places oregano family herbs in the same breath as tithed economic crops. Your grandmother pressed oregano oil onto infected wounds, made oregano tea for respiratory infections, and tucked oregano bundles into food storage to prevent spoilage. Oregano has compounds carvacrol and thymol, which have demonstrated activity against multiple bacterial strains in laboratory studies, including antibiotic-resistant strains. The regulatory framework that prevents any health claim on a plant-based product without clinical trial funding protects the industry that can afford those trials. Your grandmother never needed a trial. She had 30 years of results. Number 3, frankincense. In Matthew 2:11, they presented gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. In the ancient world, frankincense was medical currency. Its compounds, boswellic acids, are among the most potent natural anti-inflammatories ever isolated. They have been studied in over 50 clinical trials for arthritis, Crohn's disease, and asthma. Boswellic acids target the same COX-2 inflammation pathway as the pharmaceutical drugs built to replace them. One of those drugs was Vioxx. It was prescribed to 80 million people worldwide and withdrawn in 2004 after being linked to 27,785 heart attacks. The frankincense brought to the infant Jesus has never had a recall. Your grandmother kept the resin for joint pain. The pharmacy replaced it with a drug that killed tens of thousands before anyone stopped it. Proverbs 16:24. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the body. This was not a simile about kindness. Jonathan ate honey from the wild, and the Bible records his eyes brightened as glucose restored depleted energy instantly. Raw honey's enzyme, glucose oxidase, produces hydrogen peroxide on contact with tissue, killing bacteria. It contains defensin-1, a protein that actively destroys pathogenic bacteria. Clinical trials now use Manuka honey in certified hospital wound dressings for MRSA infections that antibiotics cannot clear. Your grandmother pressed raw honeycomb onto infected wounds. The pharmacy replaced that practice with antibiotics, and antibiotic-resistant infections came after. Number 1, your grandmother's garden. The single most powerful healing tool on this list is not a single plant. It is the understanding that your grandmother's garden was a system, a complete seasonal living pharmacy that cost her the price of seeds and the discipline to plant them. She did not have a diagnosis for everything. She did not need one. She knew what comfrey did to a swollen joint. She knew what elderberry did to a fever. She knew what yarrow did to a wound that would not stop bleeding. She knew these things not from a textbook, but from her mother, who knew it from her mother, who learned it from scripture and soil, and 30 years of watching what worked. The pharmacy industry did not erase these plants. The plants are still here. Every one of them on this list is growing somewhere within 10 miles of where you are sitting right now. What was erased was the knowledge of how to use them, transferred one generation at a time, and interrupted once, deliberately, by an industry that needed you to need them. Your grandmother's garden is still available to you. The seeds are cheap. The knowledge is in the scripture. The healing is in the soil. The table has always been set. You just have to learn where to sit.